Okay, we're on air. It is Thursday, May 16th. This is a meeting to check in on active development tasks for Backdrop CMS. This week, I have shortened the agenda to include mostly stuff about Backdrop Core. I removed all the stuff on our websites, etc. But I did want to point out that we have 3 new contributed projects in the last week. Atomium, which is a fantastic Drupal theme, which we now have ported to Backdrop, which is great. Navbar, which is a module that mimics what Drupal 8 does with the ability to put the administration links on the sidebar as well as on the top. And Flexible Template, which is a module that mimics the flexible layout in panels. I think they're called layouts. Don't remember what they're called. But yeah, and that's something that I think we have on the roadmap for core as well. So it's exciting that got a release recently. Nate, do you want to start talking about what happened this week?
Yeah. Well, of course, the most obvious and exciting thing is that Backdrop 1.13 came out yesterday. And so our final release of Backdrop that included the dashboard was the big headline feature there. Have we gotten the blog post out yet? No. So we've only got the release notes. Yeah, we made some API expansions around the field API. Let's see, dashboard. Let's see, there's some other things. We started working through translatable strings and config.
Link attributes.
What was that?
Link attributes for the rich text editor.
Oh, yeah. Now when you insert a link, there's a lot more properties that you can put on a link. Self-updates are turned on by default now. Manual self-updates. So you can, the option is no longer, it's no longer hidden and it's on by default. So the same way that you can update a module, a contrib module, you can now upgrade Backdrop Core itself out of the box without changing any options. So some exciting things going on there.
Did you mention the field formatter settings?
And field formatter settings module, has been merged into core. That one is
API, though.
What's that?
That was just an API. There isn't any like end user.
Yeah, it doesn't affect anything. It's one less contrib module to install, I suppose.
Yeah,
module that depends upon it. Let's see. We also. You want to add more things, Columbus?
No. It's just that it allows contrib modules to leverage the functionality that this module was providing without having to sort of like finger another dependency.
Mm-hmm.
And benefit from any improvements that we add in the future, of course.
Yep. In addition to 1.13, 1.12.7, the last bug fix release of the 1.12 branch, besides security fixes that will continue to come out until 1.14 comes out, was also released, and that included 26 additional fixes, which I was excited to see a lot of these getting wrapped up. A lot of the things that we've been mentioning every week for the past several weeks, including like CK editor icons being broken in the RTL format.
That was a long
Yeah. So that's very exciting. Let's see. We moved views into their respective modules, including like taxonomy views, and the front page got moved into Node module. We did not get comments converted into a view yet, issue 549. And there was also this issue about exposing a file name filter for the media library dialog, issue 3293, that also did not make it in. But I mean, we went through it was a little bit of a flurry storm yesterday, getting all of these items that had been reviewed extensively and marked RTBC for quite a while in for the 1.13 and 1.12.7 releases. So 1.13.1, the next bug fix release. We don't have anything slated in here yet. Of course, things that were marked 1.12.7 that didn't get in got all bumped into 1.13. But I don't think we have anything really of note to bring up for this meeting. We've got the big discussion item for this week is, 114, like that's the next version. We've got some things queued up, the items that have been bumped, of course. I think that includes things like the checksums on packages, and hang on, let me pull up the milestone. There's some other things. I'm sure somebody has it pulled up already.
Yeah, so the flexible layouts, sort of like being able to create arbitrary regions.
Oh, that wasn't one. That wasn't one of the ones that got bumped. So
No. Yeah, but it's one targeted for, or should be, I guess.
Well, that's the second half of this discussion. So the ones that got bumped include, let's see, trusted host patterns, adding that to settings.php, digital signatures on project packages, multiple screenshots for modules, themes, and layouts, converting the comment listing to a view, and telemetry. So those are the items that were in 113 that then were bumped into 114. And then, if those remain in 114, I guess is also up for discussion. But then where we're heading with 114, what kind of features we'd like to prioritize is what we're hoping to cover in this meeting. Jen, you talked before we turned the broadcast on about process, about what we're hoping to do, like as far as like make a list and then what.
So ideally we as a community could come up with a list of, I don't know, 6 to 10 issues that we think are a priority. And then we'll submit that issue to the PMC for review, and the PMC will yay or nay it. Basically with the idea that like, we've already chosen these, but if you think that one of these things shouldn't be a priority for Backdrop, you have the ability as a PMC to like remove it from my priority list. Or if there's something that you think is way more important than all of these things, maybe we'll add that to the list too. So it wouldn't be so much the PMC setting the direction of the project, but the PMC like approving the direction of the project to make sure that we're not doing anything crazy. But that still means that it leaves the decision of what those 6 to 10 issues should be in the hands of the community, which is right now us. And we need to figure out how we're going to do that. We have an issue in the queue for anyone that has an issue they think is a priority to add a label as a milestone candidate. But we need to find a way to take these issues, which I think there are, what is this, 30 per page, 60-ish of them, and turn that, maybe 40-ish, turn that into 10 at the most. And so last week we talked about a couple of things that might be good ways to remove things from our possible list. If the issue doesn't have a clear person who is an advocate for making it happen, an advocate doesn't have to be the person that writes the code, but it has to be someone who's going to check on it weekly and find out, like, if there is someone that's writing the code, do they need any help? Are there any blockers? Do they need anyone to test it? Just someone to kind of keep moving it forward. If there's no one who's really passionate about moving that issue forward every week, maybe it shouldn't be a priority for our community. And then something that had been on a previous milestone might get added weight. So something that we previously thought was a priority, maybe it's still a priority and we haven't gotten to it because it's hard. Maybe it's not a priority and it shouldn't be on the list, but that is something we need to consider carefully. Like, there are a couple of things that I think would make Backdrop a lot better that we just haven't gotten finished. And maybe they're really close. Maybe they just need user experience review or code cleanup or something little that might make it really easy to have a big difference. So I don't know, I don't have an answer to these questions, like how we're going to get this list pared down. But we need to figure it out, and we need to come up with a list probably today that we can submit to the PMC.
What would be the best way to sort of like denote those advocates? Should we be sort of like assigning the GitHub issues to them, like adding assignees? Would that be a way so that people know who to sort of like refer to?
We have to be a little bit careful with assignees because that is kind of a signal to other people not to work on that issue. They're like, oh, someone else has this, I won't touch it. And so we want to make I mean, we can decide to do that, but we should also somehow clearly indicate like whether you want other people to work on it or not. If it's like, I'm writing the code, I'm going to file a pull request, nobody else work on this for 5 minutes because I don't want my pull request not required. That's fine to assign, but I don't know, I'm going to keep that label for 4 months. That might be an issue.
Add something in the issue summary then, like a reference.
Yeah.
The same we do with with PRs. Okay.
We could do that. So last week in this weekly meeting, we made a list of a handful of the issues that were tagged with milestone candidate. And we started to kind of go through them and see like if an issue had an advocate or not. There's also some notes into here as to like whether we thought it was going to be easy or not, or questions we had. But I'm not sure going through issues like that is necessarily going to get us closer to the list that we want in the end. Does anyone have any ideas on how we're going to actually get there? Okay, here's another question. Should we think about how to remove things as being possible candidates for the next milestone to help narrow the list?
Well, related to that, my only concern is that in the past, when indications of milestones, be it a direct milestone or a milestone candidate, were removed from issues, then they got forgotten.
Right, and we did go back through a handful of issues last week and find ones at least ones we were thinking about, like we didn't get all of them, and re-add the milestone candidate label. So I went and found like fieldable files and layout relationships and a bunch of stuff that we've gotten really close and added that label back onto them. So they should be in this list. There might be other stuff, relationships we got back on there too. There might be some stuff that existed, before we had this label that we haven't remembered and hasn't gone back on. But I would also like to mention that it could be that something that we thought was a priority before isn't actually a priority, and maybe it doesn't need that label. So I would say if there's something that you think we've forgotten, you can definitely add the label and it'll be there. But there might be other stuff where we added a milestone and it didn't make it and it wasn't really that important.
Currently, as I see it, the minor milestone candidate list is like 30 issues exactly. Yeah. And then the bug fix.
I wouldn't worry about bug fixes because those can go in at any time.
Yeah.
So this is just about choosing the.
Well, it's a hard one.
Yeah. Narrowing 30 down to 6.
I can't think of any process other than eventually they will organically sort of like. One good way would be to see which one of them have a pull request.
Yeah. I'm also sorting by number of comments just to
or that
kind of see, what is it that we've been talking about in the past.
Yeah. Number of comments is a good indicator.
All right, so looking at our list of milestone candidate labels, with the most comments, a new text format configuration UI is the one with the most comments. We also need to think though, like sometimes the one with the most comments are also the most contentious.
Yeah.
So, like we don't even know what to call these things right now.
Yeah, I don't, most comments is a useful indicator, but it's probably not the best. But that one in particular has lots of comments because I've tried it several times and failed each time. That's probably the main reason. And then I think after about 4 or 5 times trying it, I think I don't think it's long because we really want it, because it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see it. You've got a comment actually from back here in 2016. I got close with this, but I gave up a couple of times. which is totally like right on
I
par.
tried again after that too.
The next highest one is core fieldable file entity bundles, and that's also one that we've had several different people make attempts on, and I think it's close, but like it's also really hard. So I don't know. I mean,
I don't think it's hard. It's just too big. That's the main. I think that's the main issue. It's huge.
yeah.
Yeah, we need
It
scope
just
on
seems
that.
like we should put that out into something else before we actually get stuff all over the board. Maybe, I don't know.
Would
Maybe
it
all
help
this
if
is useful.
would it help if we broken it down to smaller sort of like tasks?
We did that. We tried that approach, but the problem is they're all like tied together. Like the interface for adding a file is like depends on whether you have bundles or not. So there, I tried like, well, I'm just gonna do just a little piece of it, and then I was like, oh, this is silly because it's all tied together. So yeah.
I still think that one's a good possible candidate, though. I mean, the fact that all of this code exists and it all works and it provides all the functionality, like it's not quite as contentious as the text format UI where we don't even know what it should look like. Although we are hung up on the same concept that we have a UX problem here, or or terminology problem, or we've got some conflicts in the way that
I need to
this
ask.
creates interfaces that conflict with other ones.
Okay, I am going to second your recommendation, Nate, of core fieldable file entity bundles.
I'm going to just ask this because I don't see it in any of the lists, like in the current milestone or the candidates. What is going on with the references thing? Like it started early on, it had some momentum, and then we stopped. Like, what are the blockers for that one? Because I think it's an important one, but I don't see it in the list. Not even
It's in the list in the issue queue. It's issue 1301. I think that where we decided with that is that we needed to have a usable contrib project first, and we still don't have a release of a contrib version. So I'm running the dev version on a bunch of sites, and it's good. It's fine. Like all my sites are working, but it's definitely not feature complete in the same sense that either of the previous ones were. And so we have a bit of an issue with like there's a ton of issues in the queue there. Some of them are release blockers, some of them aren't. There are some core release blockers with the entity system not being complete enough. And I think that just trying to do all of it at once became too much. But now it hasn't been getting a lot of attention in Contrib.
So I now recall that one of the sort of like soft blockers was that we decided to promote it. So perhaps getting 3193 promote certain contrib modules in the project browser thing happening. Maybe that's a good idea.
That one I think is also complicated because it requires changes to project module, which is in Contrib.
Yeah. And
I think the stuff that we have to do to core is super minimal. And what we need to do is get project module working first.
Okay.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty fair assessment, actually, in that reference module doesn't have anything, like, because it stands by itself, like, it could be matured in Contrib, but that hasn't been happening either. But, like, it's really, like, if there's one module that we could probably do outside of everything else, it's reference, and just have that be done in Contrib and then pull it into core when it's ready, rather than saying.
Well, good alternatives in Contrib, so nobody wanted to do that.
What was that?
Sorry.
I say we already have good alternatives in Contrib. We have entity reference and the other references module, so I don't think anybody would necessarily choose the reference one if it's not verification.
Yeah. And my concern is that the more options that we have, then the more sort of like division we have. So people will start using some, others will start using the other, and then we'll end up in the same
We're coming
situation.
from that already in Drupal. My goal for reference, and there's a patch in the queue, I think includes an upgrade path, both from node reference and from entity reference. I had a site that was using both of them, and they moved them both into reference. But when you're trying to include like all of the features from all the projects, it gets to be a lot. So yeah, I mean, I also feel like the entity reference solution in Contrib for Backdrop is like super janky because it depends on a bunch of other Contrib projects that are making up for deficiencies in core. And so like we don't, yeah, or deficiencies in like our, like we have entity, some of entity API in core, but not all of it. So then there's like Contrib projects that like add back the parts that are missing. And I think like the way that we wanted to do it with our reference module was to use our APIs the way they were intended to be used so that we wouldn't need all these weird 777 workarounds. But it's tough because we have all these people who are coming from 777 who are using the weird workarounds. And so trying to get them to like not look for entity API module is really hard. I don't know if that's a battle worth fighting anymore.
So my understanding now is, though I understand, Jen, that you would really like to get a list and have it approved by PMC, that this will most likely evolve organically. Like, I think that having the current list as it is with the 8 issues is a good sort of like controllable number of issues. And then we have this pool of 30 issues. And at some point, if anyone wants to work on any of these, can come on Gitter and say, look, I have some capacity. I want to grab one of the issues. I don't know which one. What do you guys think?
So you're saying we don't set any
No,
for the next release?
We have the 8 ones that are actually there.
Oh, I'm not sure these are real either, though.
Okay.
So like just like remove tabs from user login register thing. Like there's stuff here that hasn't gone through the process of like being a candidate and being approved. It's just been like, and there's things that have been like bumped and bumped and bumped that I think maybe aren't priorities. I don't know. I don't know. So, obviously, we don't know anything. What do we do?
It's funny.
Tell me what to do.
The thing is that, see how you mentioned that there's some of them that are very complicated. I don't know. Do we need another tag for those to leave them still in the as a contrib candidate? Sorry, as a milestone candidate, but they note that they're sort of like blocked or something.
I'm not sure. I mean, maybe it would be good to have a like blocked tag. Just in general, we've got a bunch of issues that end up blocked, and it's hard to know from reading them that they're blocked. But I'm not sure, like, if we don't know what to do with these tags, which is what we're running into now with like milestone candidates, like how is more tags going to help this problem?
It just seems that it is a hard problem to solve, like deciding what goes in the list.
Yeah.
And usually when that happens, as I said, I would like to leave that sort of like organically happen.
But the problem is, like, so before when it organically happened, we ended up with so much stuff in the milestone that we didn't actually have a priority anymore, which is like, oh, there's another 100 issues here or whatever. So we can't just let anyone add whatever they want to the milestone. So then, okay, well, let's let anyone add whatever they want with this label. And then we can use the label to just what's in the milestone. But now we have the same problem.
I have an idea.
All right.
Instead of the PMC actually choosing which PRs are acceptable, how about the PMC publish a list of priorities then? So that, you know how we used to have themed releases that we're doing user experience, so we're doing layouts. Maybe the PMC could decide that layouts are the priority of this release, or maybe I don't know, user experience, or maybe code, or something. You know, like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
Like concept instead of issue.
Yes.
Yeah. Just broad concepts.
Yeah.
And then we, the rest of us, could use that to guide what we focus on. So if you still want to do something that isn't a PS priority, you can go ahead and work on it, but no guarantee that it would be looked at. But it would be done eventually. We're not telling you no, but PMC can focus on certain things. At least that might give us an idea, a sort of guideline to what we can do.
Yeah, I like that.
I like all those ideas, but I would also like to, because we seem to be stuck, try to understand what is the problem that we're trying to solve. And my understanding was that the problem was that people that wanted to contribute came to the issue queue and they didn't know which ticket to grab. Was that, bless you. Is that the issue that we're trying to sort out?
No, I think it's just, it's not just like random people showing up and not knowing what to do. It's Backdrop is going to have a release in 4 months. Are we going to tell people what's in that release ahead of time? And then are we going to work to make those things happen? Like, do we have a direction, or are we just like, meh, we'll see what we have in 4 months? And so far we've been trying to have a direction, and it changes a lot, which I think is fine. But I think it is, I don't know, maybe it's not helpful, but I think it's helpful to be like, oh, we're going to work really hard this month on like field findable entity bundles. And then I'm going to, if it doesn't get in, is that counterintuitive?
I think it's a little bit about just having some focus on some issues that we think will have the most impact. We obviously can't tell people what they're going to work on and not, right? We can't shape it completely. But I think we've run into the situation, right, like where we say, hey, this would be really cool. We should all work on this. And then a week later, somebody starts, oh, let's work on X. And the attention just shifts, right? Because it's just so fluid. And the thing that a couple of weeks ago was a priority gets kind of sidestepped, not because for deliberate reason.
Even with setting the priorities, though, if someone does come in and it is exciting, you won't be able to stop the shift of focus.
Okay. Yes and no. I mean, I sort of agree with you, but I think there are things we could do to moderate that, right? Like one of the ideas is if this whole idea of having an advocate was, right, if we identify 6 or 8 things and we assign somebody to sort of, hey, your job is to kind of keep some attention on this issue, I think that could counteract, we can't prevent the sudden shift, but we can put some things in place to help counteract.
Can I then propose this thing?
Yes.
We have certain people that are super active in the community.
Yes.
All right. These are good candidates for advocates. So long as they agree, we assign one, we let them decide, pick one issue and work on it.
Oh, interesting.
not work on the actual code, just push.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's similar to what I had in mind, Gregory, was that, is that sort of like each person have something that they kind of advocate for.
So you have 40 issues, just pick one.
Right. But I mean, sure. But like for me, I'd be willing to advocate for an issue, but I would love input on which one you guys think I should advocate for, right?
Do you have a favorite? I mean, I like this too, because I feel like if we're all working on the thing that we're most passionate about, it's more likely to get done than like, oh God, I have to work on references again and I really don't want to.
Exactly.
That's what we're doing now. Everybody just picks something that they like and they do it.
Right.
I like that. And I think we can also like kick that to the PMC and be like, hey, we've got these 5 people working on these issues that they're super passionate about. Is this cool with you? And as long as they don't say no, then that's fine. But that way there isn't someone who's like, I'm going to push really hard on one issue that I believe is important that we don't think is a match for our audience.
And the problem is not that we don't have this situation now, like each one of the active people picking one issue, is that some of these people, especially me, pick multiple issues.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Right.
That's what we could motivate. We could say, no, you had one issue. That's it.
You get one until it's committed. Then you can have another one.
Yeah.
You can't
finish your cookie.
You can't stop people from working on another issue, but you can stop them from being an advocate for it.
Right.
Exactly. So long as I'm an advocate for one issue, I can get to be an advocate for that single one. But I can, at the same time, if I'm a coder person, I can work on multiple other things.
Yeah. And I often have that happen too, or like during my daily work, I'll run into issues like things my clients need, and I'll build them for them. But then, like, in my free time, I'm only going to work on moving the edit tabs from the user login page or whatever it is.
All right. May I propose then that we have a list of people in an issue that is sort of like an ongoing issue. We add a list of people. We ask them to comment on that issue, and so if the issue summary, keep a list of people and a respective ticket. And if people want to be removed from that list because they don't have capacity, they say, please remove me for this milestone.
For those of people who are watching,
I didn't understand that.
So we set an issue that we call it 114 milestone. We add a list of people that are willing to advocate, to become advocates and work on pushing issues, not work on the code itself, but on sort of like advocating for the issue. And then we assign a ticket, a specific issue to each person. So if anyone wants to take a look at the list and of what the priorities are, and which person is advocate for what, they can go to that issue, the milestone issue, and know where to refer, who to refer. Sorry, because the way that I see it, it's really hard to trim down that list of 40.
I think that I don't think we have enough people on the team to really do that, to be honest. If I'm going to be the advocate for, say, for example, the flexible layouts thing that we're doing, I'm the one working on it. That's I have a full-time job, so that's it. I'm done after that. So,
yeah, that's not a bad thing.
That means that there are only going to be 6 issues that we're going to be working on each, because all of us are going to be working on the one thing. And it still brings us back to the same problem we had at the beginning. How do we decide which one of those 6 things are priorities? Or do I just pick my one thing as the one that I like? It might not be the priority. It doesn't really solve the problem of priority.
So when you say priority, you want to limit it to less than 6 things? Is that what you're saying? Because I don't see anything wrong with having like 6 advocates or 8 advocates for 8 respective issues. Are you saying that we should limit those priorities to a smaller amount?
No, I'm saying that we haven't found any way to decide which one of those 8 are going to be the priority out of the.
Well,
I think his point is that we all have the ability to like just pick up an issue right now, right? Part of the goal is to have some group influence on what those issues are that we're advocating for, without foisting it on anybody, right? It's the ability for us as a group to say, hey, we would really like somebody to step up and advocate for this, and we haven't solved that, right? It's like, I'm not actually going to work on an issue. I'm going to advocate for one, and I'm going to try and get other people involved and make sure it gets done. But I really, that's sort of the goal here. I could just pick one, sure. But my goal was like, I want to know where I'm best using my time, and I want your input for that. So how do I get that input? How do you guys help me decide which ones I should advocate for? Is that sort of what you were getting at, Doc?
Andy?
Oh, yes, sorry, my mic was off, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, yeah.
Nate, you had thoughts on this, but you haven't said anything. We're adding stuff in the chat, but for people who might be watching this video later or not able to see the chat, do you want to express your concerns?
Well, there was just some more discussion about tags, and
well, in particular, you said you're not a fan of somebody promoting their own issue.
Oh, of the idea of having a tag that would be like favorite of Nate or favorite of Jen or something like that.
Tags purpose, but you're okay with like having advocates in general.
Oh yeah, totally.
Right.
I was saying that
There was something bigger there.
something like reserving one of our limited number of tags for an individual is egocentric. That's what I was saying.
So I've been adding in the current list of 114 issues, I've been adding right above where we put the pull request in the bottom. I've been adding a section that has advocates, and then I've tagged the people who've been working on it.
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Yeah. How about that idea of having a milestone issue, though? So that people can comment and say, hey, I would like to propose this ticket, this issue for the milestone, or a person to come and say, hey, I would like to be an advocate. So we need to
already
have
a milestone label, milestone candidate label.
yeah.
What was the other one you were recommending?
No, the thing is that I would like people to come and say, I would like to sort of like upvote that specific issue. And I would like to offer myself as an advocate, or I would like it to be in the priorities. I know that they can go and add the milestone thing.
Milestone
But
candidate label?
Yes, but this is being added arbitrarily over a year. So that milestone might have been added like a year or 2 years ago and be carried over. Whereas I would like people to come and say, look, I have some capacity. I would like to help. Like they should have a dedicated issue for that where they can release the priorities or a channel where we can discuss this, like a Jitter channel where people can say, hey, I have a capacity either as a developer or an advocate for the next month or whatever, or whatever. And then we can say that.
How do people choose their issues? Is what you want to know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So usually a Gitter discussion is good. Like a person would come in and say, look, I see there's like 30 tickets out of the 30. These 4 are my favorites. What do you guys think? What should I advocate or work on? Or even like this discussion that we're having now it's recorded on a video, but it's not documented as a process or
right.
Like we need an issue for it.
With Gitter is hard because not everybody's going to be there at the same time, right? So an issue is almost better because then
And people can come and say, look, I know that I sort of like offered to be an advocate, but I don't have capacity for the rest of the month or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like we know that what the status of its sort of like advocated issue is at each point, sort of like a meta issue that is a milestone, and underneath it we have the tasks, which is the priorities, and people can comment on that issue and say, look, I think that this should be added in the priorities, or this should be removed, either because I'm working on it or because I was assigned as an advocate and now I don't have time for any whatever reason. But at least we can refer to people, and we can have a reference over time, over the period of 4 months, to what has happened.
Yeah. So I think like whether an issue is actively being worked on or not should determine whether it's in the 114 milestone or the next milestone or not. And so if you were an advocate for an issue and it didn't get done and you're still 2 months out from release, but you know that you're not going to have time to work on it in the next 2 months, you should just remove the milestone and add a comment saying, I'm not going to be able to advocate for this anymore. I'm removing the milestone or whatever.
Yeah, but it's unfair to remove the milestone.
Why?
Because you might say, is there anyone else that wants to advocate?
You could do that too. Right. And they could add back, right?
Yeah,
okay. Can I just clarify if I understand where we're at right now? It sounds to me like there's a general consensus. This idea of having an advocate for issues still sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
Is the idea right now that in order to be a milestone, a milestone issue, that it needs an advocate? So we basically have however many issues on the milestone as we have advocates. Is that kind of where we're at?
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of well then, right, I would say like that an individual either can just pick something they're passionate about, or like me, they could come to a development meeting and say, hey, I would like to advocate for something for the next milestone.
Or they can ask in Gitter. I mean, whatever works for anyone.
Yeah. It could be in Gitter. It could be, I would probably prefer to do it like at a meeting. Go ahead.
I have a proposal, a single tag that says has advocate. So
why is that better or worse than listing the advocate in the issue?
I would still like issues not to be removed from or the tags better, the milestone candidates not to be removed. But if these are to be prioritized, then we should, like the idea of having an advocate sounds good to me. So we need to denote which issues have advocates and which do not. But we do not necessarily need to tie that to the milestone candidate thing.
Oh, but if an issue isn't going to get done, it doesn't have an advocate, it shouldn't be in the milestone.
But the
So here's what I've been doing, and this might solve the problem. Is like anytime I remove anything from a milestone, I've been adding the milestone candidate label. So it's still in a list of like, these are things that are high priority. But the milestone is like, these are the issues that are going to be closed before the next release. And so we know for sure an issue is not going to get closed for the next release. It should come out of that list. But being in the milestone candidates list still puts it in a pool of stuff where it's like, hey, are you looking for something to be an advocate for? Here's
Right.
issues that our community generally thinks are high enough priority that they should have this label. So we already have a process for that. I'm not completely against the has advocate label, but I feel like the problem you're trying to solve isn't really a problem. I just want to try and get to the bottom of like what the real problem is.
The reason why I brought this up was that it was suggested that we will start removing the milestone candidate tag.
No,
I don't think that's the case.
Can we clarify
Yes.
what exactly advocate will be again? I kind of lost that.
So it won't be necessarily a person that will work on the code, but it would be the person that others can refer to get an update on the status. And it would be the person that will be pushing or trying to find people to work on the ticket. So if a person, for example, that is working on the code, like the issue requires documentation, the advocate will go and find a person or will themselves work on the documentation. They will sort of like try to help the people that are actively working on the code see the issue through.
So every PR will have an advocate, or is it every subject will have an advocate, or
every issue would have an advocate?
every issue with a minor release milestone would need.
So
oh wow,
and maybe even a little bit too narrow. Maybe it'd be more like if we said like on the roadmap that we were going to have like layout enhancements or self updates or media management improvements, the advocate would be at that level, not at the like individual level, or I don't know, because some of these things are really broad, like media management, like that. The advocate might not be interested in like fieldable files, but they might be interested in improving the file browser or something like that, or the image browser. I don't know. Yeah.
Not an easy issue to solve.
For like each individual issue, some of these issues are too granular though. Like if you said an advocate could only have one issue per milestone, then
they could be Tiki and pick a meta.
Yeah, it's more. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's more like at the meta level that we're talking about.
I still think if we have advocates at the meta level, but we don't have anyone pushing an individual issue forward, we're very likely to end up in the same boat now, where it's like, oh, we didn't do anything on references for the last.
Not necessarily, because the meta has the restriction of keeping the topic the same. So it would be working on that, sphere. Like I'll be working on the media improvements. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because they won't be advocating for totally different issues,
Right, but media, like if you're advocating for media and there's like 100 media issues, none of them could get done.
Right, but you could make a meta that was the issues that you're interested in doing for that release.
Yeah.
So the advocate would own a meta and list all of the things inside of the meta, not everything conceivable within that entire concept, just the ones that they're advocating for the next release.
And then if there are 3 and none of those get done because there's spread across 3 issues instead of 1, that's
then the advocacy has failed.
What can you do? Yeah.
Can I just say, I like where this is going, but I think it's a different issue, or it's a whole different concept, right? The advocating for a specific issue and advocating for a meta like topic,
yeah,
like really different things. And I'm afraid we've just shifted the topic too far. Like I would propose that we not abandon that idea, but maybe we try an advocate for an individual issue for one release.
Okay.
And then revisit it like at the next release and say, was this too narrow and should we expand it?
Yeah. I'm just worried we'll lose track of like getting stuff in if we're like so excited about media. I don't know. I get excited.
I really just don't think we have enough
people
to be adding more labels to the people that we have.
Yeah.
So you're going to be the developer, the PMC chair, the advocate, the person who writes the blogs. I mean, all of us have lots of things that we're already doing. To add another label, I don't think it helps. And it's a good idea, but I just don't think it helps in our situation. It just adds another layer of complexity to me. And we're still going to be back to the same problem where we have too many issues and we don't know which one's a priority.
Yeah, so the advocate will not be a blocker. Like,
How do we decide what's priority?
yeah, so the idea is that the advocate would not be a blocker. It would be a person that has more time available, but not necessarily the skills to do the work. So he's there to help the person who is actually working on the issue. If they happen to be the same person, yeah, okay then. But usually it would be, for example, team wants to push for a specific issue, and then you are working on it, and then you're blocked. It doesn't have to be you that unblocks you. So team will be there to sort of like every dev meeting or every day just poke people on Gitter for code reviews or testing or what have you.
I can see for Doc Wilmot where it might not affect you so much. You might feel like this doesn't really change anything because you're already that deep in an issue. For me, it feels like it gives me a place to hook into the process more. So I think it's more helpful for me. I could also see if we have concerns about this sort of testing this with just a couple of advocates, this, just trying a couple of, like we don't have to all be advocates. Some people that want to keep working the way they are, but I could step up and say, I'm going to try this and see how it works for me.
Yeah, we could do that.
That's another option to just sort of test this out.
Yeah, in which case I would say pick an issue.
And I would say, which one should I pick?
Pick me.
I think it's just going to be Tim as the sole advocate for everything. Everybody else is going to be right.
I'm not an advocate for everything.
Yeah, well, we have to, like, that's, the nice thing is to...
Go
ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Andy, you go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was saying, we kind of moved off trying to decide what's the priority. Can we do that again?
As in which specific issues are the priority?
Right. So
No, how do we choose priorities?
right.
We haven't decided how we're going to do that.
How these two things tie together is that, like, for example, you might have something that you think is a priority or that you're going to work on anyways, right? And you might not care whether you're an advocate or not. The only reason that naming you the advocate would be helpful to the rest of us is then I know I can focus on something else. So it might be fairly meaningless to you, but if you said, hey, I'm working on X anyway, so I'll just call myself the advocate, nothing's really changed, then I can say, oh, I don't have to worry about that. I can pick another issue.
I also feel like if we end up choosing 3 issues, Andy, that you've already put a lot of time in, then you might accidentally end up being the advocate for all 3 of them. But I don't have one that's assigned to me right now. So maybe I'll be like, okay, well, would you rather work on the flexible layout builder or the fieldable file entity bundles? And if you're like flexible layout builder, then I'll be like, okay, then I'll go work on file entity bundles. So something like that could be helpful.
Anyways, right. So if I were to pick one, I would want some impact. Like, where can I put my efforts that's going to have the most impact? Where are you not, where are other people not working? I think if we just looked at the list, right, I would look at things that I know, because I feel like if I understand them, getting back up and migrate into core, I don't know how complicated that is. Maybe it's too ambitious, but at least it's something that I sort of understand. I don't want to do fieldable files because I don't understand that. And again, I'm not going to actually probably be the one who does the final implementation on any of these, but if it's something I understand, it's going to be easier for me to recruit.
Okay. So now with the implementation of, by default, allowing core updates, I think that we have consensus on the merge all the update core module theme layout, the issue 2714. Would that be something that you understand and you can?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that. The core updates, say it again.
So we now, with this release, we enable
Right.
core updates by default. And we agreed that now it gets more confusing, the fact that we have a separate update pages for modules, for themes, and for layouts. And we decided, and now we have core listed on all of these. So we have decided to move all these things and consolidate them in a single page, a single updater page, if you would like.
Okay. I guess I haven't been following that discussion. So this sounds like something I could understand, but I'd have to go back and review it. So,
But I put a link to the
Yep.
issue in Gitter. But yeah, so that's one that's currently has the milestone, but doesn't have an advocate.
okay. And is that one that there's some general consensus here is pretty important? Is it-
Gregory thinks it's pretty important. I think it's pretty important. I don't know if that's enough for general consensus.
Yeah, it's confusing. So Tim, just to get you a rough idea for this specific issue, is that if you go to the, for example, appearance and then update themes, you will see that the list is not filtered by themes. It also includes modules that you can update and now core as well. And then you see the same page if you go to functionality update modules. And if you go to layouts, update layouts, you also see the same thing. So they're supposed to be separate pages for separate things, but they display the same thing. So we decided to move it to a single place, consolidate it, and have a single page where everyone can update. Sorry, when someone can update everything.
Right. I think one of the tricks in picking out these issues is to pick something that, like, I kind of want to get excited about an issue that's like something we can sell, like bringing backup and migrate into core. That's not my favorite. It's not necessarily my favorite, but it's like something really solid, and I could say, wow, I accomplished that. And an issue that's just sort of fixing something that we've already done might be important, and if so, then I'm happy to do it. But
okay,
you know, it doesn't jump out at me in the same way. But I'm still willing to do that. Part of having the group discussion is that if you guys tell me it's important.
Okay.
And if I look at it closer, I might agree with you. Then I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, let's not necessarily worry about choosing these right now. Tim will give you a chance to read over that issue and see if it's something that excites you or not. And if not, it's fine if you don't want to advocate for it.
Right.
But there are two things. So another thing is, like, I don't know how, like, the two things that I'm most excited about on this list are both issues that DocuMomo has put a ton of time into. And they're, so then how do we decide, like, do we fight over who gets to be an advocate for something? I don't know. Wrestle for it. That's another thing.
Tim, just to make your life a bit easier, if you want to choose issues, it's like if you go to the milestones, and then also the milestone candidate, you can filter by the ones that also have the tag feature request.
Sure.
Because these are things that are new and exciting.
Right.
The other ones that are tagged as documentation or task is cleanup things.
Yeah.
So maybe that's another way for you to filter down and decide.
Yeah, I get it. And I mean, part of this process is that sometimes the cleanup things get ignored because they're not exciting. And so
No, they don't. No, they don't. That's why.
Okay. Good.
Okay, guys, we're kind of running out of time. Can I just recap what I think we've decided, just to make sure I've got it right? So what we're going to try and do is make sure that all of the issues that are in the 114 milestone have an advocate. And if you find an issue that you're really passionate about and you want to advocate for it, you're going to, like, add a comment on the issue and be like, I want to advocate for this issue. Make sure nobody else wants it more than you. And then you can add it has to be already tagged with a milestone candidate label, but then you can move it into the 114
milestone.
if you're a milestone, if you're its advocate. Okay.
Yes.
I think we should document that. Just that part we finally figured out. I'll write that up and put it in the how to use the issue queue section of the website. And then let's try this for a while. We can get that milestone in an issue for the PMC and just say, like, this is what we're doing. Stop us if it's wrong. And then if there's anything they want us to focus on, we'll have them let us know.
Right.
Yep.
And it could be something meta, like upgrading from 777 or media or whatever, but we'll at least give them a chance to weigh in on it.
Just to also just say what I feel came out of this conversation is that we have a plan to try something. It doesn't. It might not work, but at least it's better than what we did for the previous milestone. Let's try this. Yes.
Well,
yes.
And one of the, in terms of the tagging, Nate said, there was some discussion favorite of Nate or favorite of whatever. One of the ideas was favorite of PMC, and that might be just a way for the.
I think that's the same as milestone candidate.
Yeah.
Well, if that's true.
Yeah, I don't think we need a separate tag for that. I think if a PMC has an issue that's a favorite, they can add it as a milestone candidate, and it'll go into the pool.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just getting at if there's any reason that they wanted, if they wanted to highlight a particular issue, or a way to make that.
I kind of agree with that, because I think that the whole discussion we started with is trying to decide which of the hundreds of issues we've got are going to be priority.
Mm-hmm.
And if we leave it to all of us, none of them are going to be priority. Which is why I feel it might be useful if we have a leadership team, the PMC. We're not asking them to decide this is what we're going to do and that's it. It's not it's not theocracy or autocracy, you see.
Mm-hmm.
It would be useful if, from their knowledge, as the senior developers and the people who have experience in these things, if you look through all the issues, or not necessarily the issues, but the topics and the groups of things, you say, these are the things that we ought to be working on, we think.
Mm-hmm.
Put that down. For me, that would be useful. So it's not the same as a milestone candidate. It's just a broader umbrella of these are the things we focus on.
Okay.
I think if we do that, then maybe the advocacy plan might be more helpful. Then we can say, okay, we can get an advocate for this one thing because the PMC has said it's important to us.
Yes.
Otherwise, everyone is still going to pick one of the thousands of issues to be an advocate for, which may not necessarily be a priority.
Okay.
In the end, we're going to end up with thousands of milestone candidates in the end.
No.
I think it's another important separate thing that we need to go to the PMC and say, hey, we just did a release. What do you think our priorities should be?
Mm-hmm.
Conceptually, give us a list. And we put that somewhere so that when people are trying to decide which issues to be an advocate for, they can compare to that list and say, PMC says we need to work on media, so I'm going to pick a media issue or something like that.
All right.
Yeah.
Just on what you said, Andy, before, there's hundreds or thousands of issues, but currently the milestone candidate thing holds only 30, and the actual milestone holds only 8. So it's not such a bad situation.
But that might not stay that way.
Well, maybe we need to work on keeping it that way. And if someone sees it getting out of control, they should say something.
Yeah. But I still think that, like,
problem for that
it's still useful.
Right.
Sorry. The other thing that we could do is see how we have the process of adding a tag for a milestone, and then someone else comes and agrees, and then we add it to the milestone. We could also have people say the opposite, say that I disagree. I want this milestone tag to be removed from this issue.
I think Andy's saying it doesn't matter what process we go through as a community to reach decisions. He's saying that he wants a smaller group or the leadership team to guide the community.
Okay. How about
independently of the processes that we
They're
use.
both necessary, though.
All right. Can I propose a final thing then? We ask each member, although it might seem a little bit sort of oligarchic, we ask each member of the PMC to pick up an issue. So we have only 6 members of the PMC right now, or 8? How many are we?
6.
6. So we'll have 6 issues that are priorities. Is that fair enough?
Do they have to be issues though? Like, I mean, you have to choose one issue.
Yes.
Do they have to work on them?
That's what Andy had trouble with. If we go to the meta issue, then it gets out of control. So they have to pick an issue that is very exciting, that is very sort of like something that we should focus on.
Could they pick a theme that this is our theme for the next release? Is that what he was getting?
Maybe that should be a holistic sort of like all of the members of the PMC should decide on that, or most of them.
Right. That would have to be one. Yeah, you couldn't have 6 themes.
Yes.
Yeah. Or if all 6 people just happen to have 6 things that were similarly aligned, then coincidentally there might be a theme that was drawn out of that.
Yeah, exactly. So if each PMC member picks up an issue, then we can sort of like deduct what the theme is.
Maybe.
I don't think it needs to be one issue per PMC member per se. I think if the PMC sits down and decides that, listen, based on our research on WordPress and Drupal, this particular issue or these three should be focused on for the next 4 months in order to make Backdrop competitive, then that would be a useful guidance for us. It doesn't have to be 6. If all 6 of them agree that this one thing or these 2 things that's what we should be focused on. It doesn't mean that the rest of Backdrop stops working.
Yeah.
But at least it gives us guidance that this is what the PMC feels is the best.
And Andy, would you be happy if these issues that the PMC decides are a limited amount, like 2 or 3 or 4? Just don't get stuck up on the number. I'm just saying it should be a very compact number, like.
Sorry, my internet.
Issues. I think we can have the PMC I don't know, open an issue with the PMC that's like, what does Backdrop need to be focusing on right now, and see what people say. And people might say we need to resolve this issue, or they might say like we need to improve upgrade from Drupal 7, or they might say we need to make our layout system more closely match Drupal 8, or whatever it is. And we can pull out the little things that they say and document them in a public place where people who are working on core can see that, whether it's like in a sidebar on the GitHub issue queue or in a featured issue or something, just a place where we can document that, and we can have that same question after every release that's like, hey, what do we need to be working on now? And if that changes over time, it can change. But I don't think we need to set like, you need to choose an issue. I think we just need to ask a broader question and see what that is and see what the answers are.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
Sorry, I missed that last 10 seconds. Sorry, the bit that Andy says he agrees with.
I'm just saying we don't need
Really,
to.
10 seconds.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Andy.
I was saying I agreed with the whole statement, not just the 10 seconds.
Okay, yeah, please repeat the statement just for the sake of myself, please.
I was just saying that the question should be broader. Like, we don't need to set a specific number of issues or a specific number of topics. We just need to ask the question, like, what should we be working on? And from the 6 answers we get in the PMC issue, it will become clear whether they're individual issues or concepts that we need to do. And if we re-ask that question after every release, we can also sort of see, like, does it stay the same over time, or is there one area that everybody keeps saying we need to work on? That would then filter up to the top of the list.
I agree. I agree with that as well.
Okay. I'll open an issue.
Yes, open an issue for the PMC.
Okay. Whew.
All right, we got it both sides. The top down and the bottom up. All right.
We have a plan. Did anyone, I don't think that anyone reported any big issues with the 113, right? The upgrade.
I hit one issue upgrading yesterday, but only on one site. And so I think it was isolated.
Okay.
But yeah, so far it's been quiet. So that's good.
So this was a prologue, sort of like initial question for the next one. So do we have, we usually give it a couple of weeks and then we have a 113.1, sort of like follow-up. Is that still the plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the last thing that I want to ask for the day and ask for any ideas. So the cross-ports from various modules like views, we are quite behind. So I've done some work. We have the list. This is a problem with which I need help or ideas with. We have a list of the commits, and then we have them as checkboxes. And usually in the meta issues, a checkbox means that it has been merged. Because I don't want to file, it's like might be 20 or 35 commits. We don't want to file separate issues for those. How can we sort of like have a way to also have a second tick box against each one of these that people can come and say, I reviewed those?
So the way that we did this in the past was you don't have to have a separate pull request for each issue. I mean, if you want to do that, that's fine. But I used to do like 10 at a time. And then that one issue would get like reviewed, reverted, and until all of the problems in that one pull request were resolved. So there could be problems with 3 of the patches I applied, but it would just all be in one pull request.
When you say review and reverted, you mean the tags that we had, that it's RTBC?
Yeah, so one issue would have one pull request, but that issue, or even if it's a meta issue like views, it doesn't have to be one-to-one, but there would be one checkbox for each pull.
It's just that I think it sort of like increases the barrier for people that are reviewing. If it's 35 linked pull requests,
Yeah.
and they have the capacity to check 5, then the next person that will come, like say Herb does the initial review, and then Nate comes and he doesn't know which ones have been RTBC'd, which ones of the 35 he needs to check.
Yeah,
So
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been working okay with just people posting a comment saying like Herb comes in and says RTBC, and then he says the pull request number, or and then the overall issue that contains all of the port links, all of the links to the PR, the overall issue stays at the highest level of its pull request. So if there's a RTBC pull request, the whole thing is RTBC, and then it'll get moved back down to needs review if needs review is the highest state left. And if there's nothing in needs review, then the whole thing gets moved down to needs work. And that continues happening until everything is fixed, and then the whole thing is closed.
Okay, if it works, okay. I was under the impression that this was not working for you guys, but it might have been just that there's not enough time to sort of like review everything. Okay.
Yeah, no, I think it's working fine, and I could have gone through a lot of those views issues because they were tagged for 113 and 112.7, but I really was focused on the 113 ones that
no worries.
Reviewed and were already ready to go.
So just to sort of like give some sort of confidence, most of them are like straight ports, just the functions that changed on our end. And some of them have been committed to views for like years.
Yeah, I noticed.
They're tested. Once we reach the most recent ones, maybe then we'll be sort of like less untested. And the reason why I bring this up is that it's not just the views module. There's other things that we brought to core. So we need to get done with that. So we keep it to a sort of like a level of control that there's less backlog of commit. And then the views specifically has caused, there's other issues that sort of like depend, like we're wondering, is that because we don't have parity? Like, is it happening on Views 7? Why is it not happening there and it's happening with us? Yeah. I mean, speaking of focus and direction, I know that we are excited about new features, but this is something that needs to happen.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Well, let's call it a meeting. That was a lot of things. So, Jen, you're going to open a PMC issue.
Yeah.
We don't need any more tags. That's good.
I did have a blocked tag, just so you guys know.
We do have that document for processes for the way we use tags and the way we use the issue queue. If we could get that updated with this new concept, that would be great.
So I was using the thing on backdropcms.org and the how to use the issue queue. Are you thinking about something in the issues repository?
No, how to use the issue queue.
Okay, all right.
A reference to that from the issue repository would be good, like a link to it.
Okay.
Or even I'll see if it makes sense to be added to the issue templates. But no, now that I think of it, the issue templates are for the person that initially files the issue. We need something that has visibility.
Right.
Okay.
So probably not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'd make it so that a new anonymous person could file a milestone candidate like through a template. That would.
Yeah.
Probably not the direction we want to head.
Okay. Yeah.
I love those templates though. It's so great that it adds the tags. Like when you create the new issue, so you can say it's a bug and it comes with the bug tag.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily need people to be able to tag quite so much anymore.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, thank you everybody for the extra long meetings today. See you guys.
Good.
Sorry, what did you say, Sam?
They're so good. These meetings are so good.
Yes, they are.
It's the best meetings.
And it was a great release, by the way. I love all the things that went in. Yeah.
Oh, well, we should in the blog post or somewhere note that you have to turn on dashboard module. I saw on Twitter people are like, I upgraded, but there's no dashboard. Well, you have to turn it on.
Yeah. Remember how I said we should have those info messages after each release?
Yeah.
That they could that ideally they would be pulled by b.org. So we should have a hey, the new release is out and try the new dashboard module.
Well, now that we have a dashboard,
Put it on the dashboard.
Yes, actually.
yeah.
Okay, cool. All right.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.